and welcome to the Daft Souls podcast. I'm joined as ever by Mr. Quentin Smith.
Hello, I'm going to burp.
Don't burp. And we've also got Philippa War.
Hello.
Excellent writer. And also on video person, as in seen in the recent video on Shut Up and Sit Down, the Gen Con special, which you should go and watch actually, because not now, you're listening to this, but because it's not really got anything to do with board games. It's just quite a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So, and yeah, go and watch that, but not now, because now it's time for the Daft Souls podcast.
Is it times for video games, Matthew? I'm so excited for video games.
It is time for video games, and I'm excited too, but I'm sad to say that I actually haven't had any time to play any. So, what have you been playing, Pip?
Well, you can choose. Well, you can't choose what I've been playing, but you can choose what you want to hear about. I've played a few sort of plant growing things, and I've got stuck into...
Sorry, that was me pressing my buzzer. Can we hear about the plant growing
Yeah,
things?
I want to hear about the plants.
I'm big into gardening kind of games.
I am as well, like Harvest Moon, Viva Pinata.
All good, except for the bad ones.
Something about watching something grow and then selling it. It's beautiful.
So you've picked the plant section of this decision tree.
Yep.
Do you want the Mendelian kind of genetic growing thing, or do you want the desktop succulent companion
I
thing?
suspect I've been accompanied by the same succulent's desktop companion. I forget what it's called.
Viridi.
Viridi, yeah. I downloaded this because I saw some people complaining about it. And weirdly, I thought that was a good idea to then go and...
Was one of them me?
Get it on Steam. Was it you talking to Alice? I forget.
I killed my... there was a murder.
So, yeah, Viridi is a sort of plant pot simulator.
I'm just a bit lost on the phrase succulent desktop companion.
I
thought I had one of them. It was a peach. I ate it.
I had one of those sexy desktop girls in the 90s. Yeah, full of spyware, mostly spyware.
Yeah,
she was basically a spy, which makes her even sexier.
It's the kind of a side thing, but I did actually. The one time I ever really, really broke a computer was not with that. Not with anything sexy. In fact, it was a game called Animals. Do you remember? Was it called Creatures? Creatures.
Yeah.
Which
with a
was
Z, was it?
Yeah.
In the same vein as cats and dogs.
But it was before that. It wasn't that. Maybe, but they were like little weird aliens, and it was
Oddballs.
No, it was kind of one of the early things where you looked after these little creatures, and it wasn't a desktop thing; it was a full program. But we had to look after
a full program, not one of these half programs. What are you talking about? What did you do in Creatures?
You looked after these funny little things. I'll Google it in a minute so I can see what it looks like because I don't remember it well enough. But I just had to change some settings to get it running, and I got it running. But then the next day, our computer wouldn't boot and never booted again.
The creatures got loose.
This was back in the day of like
got loose with a Z.
Gremlins?
No, it was like when you had to boot games from DOS, right?
Yeah.
So I just messed up my computer big time. Did you mess up your computer with the sexy girls?
I don't know, man. Let's talk about something else.
Sure.
So yeah, Viridi, because it's out on Steam now. It's like it's free.
It's free, and then there's like a little store inside where you can buy all your little seedlings.
I was totally sold on this. I saw that you could have a little desktop plant, kind of like Mountain, that bit of freeware. But
it's basically a digital companion. That's what I would say. Like
sure.
It's a thing that keeps you company and you interact with a little bit, but.
But I just was looking forward to checking in on it every day and watching it grow. But it seems like a lot of the growth is sort of preordained and. It was incredibly inflexible for something I was very excited about, and I didn't want to spend 99 pence on an imaginary seed.
No, well, it's between 9 cents and 39 cents. Why is this stuck with me?
Wow.
And you can also buy like a map which lets you get like an extra bowl, I think. So you can have another sort of crop of plants if you really want to. But like the whole thing, it was billed as this super relaxing experience and like I think they called it a haven. And then you've got microtransactions, and automatically that comes into conflict with my definition of havens.
Yeah, haven for your tiny unwanted coins.
Because, like, I said this when I wrote about it on RPS, but it was like, I would so much have preferred to just spend a couple of dollars on the game and then just never have to encounter payments. I just wanted to sort of do a little bit of gardening.
Yeah.
But, and the whole thing is, so they get a bit thirsty, and then you spritz them with water, and
there's a snail that goes around the edge of the pot.
You can water the snail as well.
Yeah, that's funny.
It's funny once.
Yeah, it was. All of the brief exploration I did was great once, and had all the lasting power of like a piece of chewing gum, and then it was gone.
Yeah, and just
that's a great shame.
It sings to the plants, but you don't get any control over that. I wanted just. With those bits, with Mountain, it didn't bother me because it felt like Mountain was just happily doing its own thing, and you were just there to observe, basically, if you wanted to. But with this, it feels like it is encouraging a degree of interactivity, but then it limits it so much and takes over.
It does seem like in an age where we've got video games that simulate entire cities or evolution or any number of preposterously vast concepts. A plant that lives on your computer is not asking too much. It's Matt, here, why don't you Google Viridi, and we're going to get your live response as to whether you would have fallen into
these are the creatures, by the way.
Creatures. I remember this.
Yeah, it was kind
we're old.
Viridi.
Young people remember this.
Viridi.
With an eye on the end.
Oh, you just brought loads of pictures of a girl called Viridi.
With an eye on the end?
Yeah.
Here we go.
I'm a bit worried about safe search here.
No, it's an anime lady.
It's an anime lady again. Everything is an anime lady, apparently.
Viridi on Steam, there you go.
All we're producing now is a live recording of people who don't know how to use Google.
So that's what it looks like. It's a bowl that floats in space, and you can sort of, you start off with a set of plants that you choose, and then, you can either get like free plants each week. You get one seedling and can add it.
Doesn't it look nice?
It looks. I've got to say, it looks gorgeous.
It does look lovely, and they do grow. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't gel with me at all. When I say it doesn't do anything, it's not like I'm expecting it to do something. It's more that it doesn't do anything for me.
There's no I was expecting it to be. Game.
I was expecting it to be like a relaxant, and just to sort of, if I was getting stressed by my inbox or getting stressed with, just something that was happening in other aspects of my life, I could look over at my other monitor and just be like, oh, but I've got a nice, I've got a little plant that's doing its own thing, and I'm sort of, tending it.
Games as relaxation is a thing we haven't really seen enough of, I don't think.
I get the feeling we think we want a garden. I don't know if we do. I know one gardener one real life gardener, and he is the biggest twat ever. Like the degree of dedication and pain and anguish you have to go through to create
it breaks you as a person.
Well, I've got a 100% case rate that is true.
Well, because I'm not looking to replicate the experience of gardening, because if I was, I would be good at gardening, but I'm not. I'm horrible at gardening, and everything dies. But in this, only one thing died, so I'm counting that as a success.
It's quite beautiful just watching things grow. Like, I remember on things like, what's that bloody game called from the guys?
Creatures.
No. Just Windowsill, I think, where it's like, that's not really about plants, but it's a game where we have lots of quite organic things occasionally, or just things that behave in an organic way. And there's something about a certain type of animation of things growing in an interesting way that can just be soothing, just pleasant.
We are hardwired to enjoy the growth of things that we own, to enjoy numbers going up in MMOs, but also I remember everyone got obsessed. Remember Black and White, bizarre Peter Molyneux godsend.
Yeah, I love that game.
Back in the day. But your creature would grow steadily and almost like you wouldn't notice it, and then you'd see it standing next to a house and go, it's bigger than a house now.
Yeah.
When did that happen?
It's kind of amazing.
Yeah.
But you're right. I think the two games I've enjoyed the most that have involved growing plants, Harvest Moon really was not about growing plants. It was about becoming a...
Harvest Moon was a game about capitalism.
Yeah.
Throwing eggs at women.
Becoming ruthlessly efficient at growing corn and then selling it for loads of money and not wasting a single second of your day.
And yet wrapped up in this, with this wrapper of that you were... you were the salt of the earth and you were saving this town, but I realise now you represented all the invading capitalist forces that are the bad guys in Harvest Moon.
Yeah, it's true. I was making so much money. But the other thing, of course, was Viva Pinata, and I think that's a kind of funny one in the fact that
I love Viva Pinata.
Viva Pinata is magical, and
I think to be a member of Daft Souls, you have to apparently have enjoyed Viva Pinata.
I've probably said it many times, but there was just something, you had to go through a wall with that game where you had to kind of accept that you were out of control.
Zen and the art of Viva
And when
Pinata.
you did that, when you accepted that you didn't really have control over things and things were going to happen, that was just a part of it, you just sort of became quite zen about it. Yeah, and you had these moments where you were just growing these huge, beautiful plants, and I got so into growing the plants as well. Like, I wasn't expecting to, but the way that the first game works, and it's actually, to this day, remains one of the most genius things of the last generation, in my mind, is the fact that the game didn't have any aims. There was no goal. You just start playing the game, and the aim was just make a nice garden, get some cool animals in it. Of course, the game did progress as you went through, but really the only thing guiding you was that you had this book full of stuff and like things to tick off, basically, of being like, have you bred the fudgehawks? Have you made the biggest type of chili that you can possibly grow? Have you made a really big, like, apple or whatever? And then the way it worked was then, as you ticked it off in the book, you got achievements for it, and you would finish the game when you got 1,000 achievement points. Now, what I find amazing about this was a game that came out really close to the start of the cycle of the Xbox 360, and it nailed that, and Crackdown just nailed how to do achievements for a video game, of making it so that they give you, like, they actually, these little things that are outside of the game, the metagame, allow you to just give the player direction of how to progress,
how to enjoy themselves,
and the fact that for so many years of playing and reviewing Xbox games when I worked at OXM, like, so few games, like, I play like hardly any games that actually did use achievements in that way, despite the fact that it was like Viva Pinata. It was like, this is how you do it.
I feel like the secret to all video games is contained within Minecraft, in as much as Minecraft does not have achievement. Oh, Christ, I guess it does now, because it would have been out and back. Okay, when I was playing Minecraft back in the 80s...
the 1880s.
The 1880s.
It was just powered by bellows.
Yes, when my servant boy was winding my computer as fast as he could.
The difference engine,
yes.
I think you had to have an army of... When I played it, you didn't have computers. We had an army of servants who would compact soil into brick squares.
Whenever it was, there were... yes, basically. It was dirty and noisy. But when I was playing it and writing about it for Rock Paper Shotgun, it was interesting because that game makes you want to do things despite none of it having any purpose. Like, I wanted to build a house on stilts, and I did that. I wanted to build a mine that went down to the bottom of the earth. I didn't do that. I was too lazy. Like, I wanted to see what was on that island. I built a boat. Like, what is it about Minecraft that means you just invent these goals for yourself? Because if we can figure that out, I swear all of modern game design will be advanced by like 10 years.
Yeah, it's true.
Why does Gone Home need to have an end? Like, what? I mean, endings are always satisfying. I was talking to a friend about this, actually, who was trying to come up with how to structure a Minecraft-like game, but get just a thought puzzle. How do you do a Minecraft-like game with crafting and exploration, potentially of a procedurally generated world, and give it an ending that players find satisfying? How do you bake that into the design of the game?
But Minecraft does, doesn't it? It's got that nether...
Okay, right. Yes, it does have a nether, and it has a dragon that you fight.
But that's something that only some people...
I don't know. I never played enough Minecraft.
You're totally correct. For the purposes of this thought experiment, I don't mean a silly, arbitrary, like, video game style boss. I mean, like, something that is a narrative ending. I mean, like, a death, a birth, marriage. What?
I was going to say, I was thinking while we were talking about this, about Animal Crossing, and I guess the end point in quote marks is that you pay off the mortgage, because that's the only thing that the game is sort of compelling you to do.
And Animal Crossing is a really good point for exactly what I'm discussing, because Animal Crossing is clearly a game about moving to this town and living a life, but the one thing Nintendo haven't been able to solve is how to end it, which is why every game of Animal Crossing ends with you tragically abandoning all these neighbours, then maybe switching on your DS a year later and finding your town overgrown with weeds, and everyone going, oh, we haven't seen you in ages, but they're all the same age.
I love how shocked they look. They go like, oh my god, it's you! Like, as if like you've been, like, they thought you were dead.
So this is what I'm saying, as you know, video game critics sat around a microphone, can we figure out like a way to do that? How would Animal Crossing on Minecraft end in a way that ends your story? That isn't like killing a drake, because no fantasy book ever.
It's difficult. I mean, it's hard to like. It has to be embedded in. I mean, the whole thing, like with Viva Pinata, was the idea was you were becoming a master gardener, and the way that you become a master gardener is by like practicing and finessing and becoming the best at absolutely everything. And I think in some games that would be really tedious. But what was lovely about that was it's like when I started playing it, I started like growing plants a little bit, but I was like, I can't be bothered growing plants. It didn't seem like a fun thing. It seemed like there's all this stuff with plants, but I wasn't interested in it. It felt like it was just decoration.
What were you interested in?
I was interested in the animals and getting more animals and breeding them and giving them names and painting them colours and stuff when you could occasionally, because you get rare ones. Fun times. But then when I actually started doing the vegetable stuff and growing these fruits and veg, I got so into it. And it kind of ruined nature for me for quite a while, because it was a hot
Ruined
summer.
nature? Like realities nature?
Yeah, that's what I mean. It ruined the real world.
Okay.
Because I just spent a whole summer with my curtains shut, just like nurturing these incredible, beautiful, huge, colourful
and then you finished playing the game.
And then I walked out into the garden. It was like everything was just a bit kind of dark green and rubbish.
I remember this. You got 2 hedgehogs and you put them in a box and you shook it really hard, and then it didn't work.
To a community kind of service thing for about. No, I didn't hurt any hedgehogs. But no, it's weird. I mean, that game ended in a fairly unsatisfactory way, but it didn't matter because it's that feeling of being like, well, I'm done now.
Something that I was thinking was thinking about Animal Crossing and the fact that it's basically it's kind of almost like a snow globe of stuff. You know, it's like a toy that you open up and play with every now and again that just happens to like interact with you.
Yeah.
I was thinking about Toy Story, and maybe it would be nice if you could like hand it on to like your kid or something.
That's a great idea. God,
like,
that's awesome.
That would be how it finished.
The idea
you would just
of,
be like, here's my world. Now
if when you buy Animal Crossing, you have, you can create your own world, or
you can archive it, and then like if
you
you had
can
a kid,
inherit a world,
be like,
and then the world already has like stuff built into it and something. That would be really
but like because of platforms and because of wanting you to buy the game again, like that stuff is, because it used to be that you could give people your code and then they could come visit your world on like GameCube, I think.
Yeah.
And like
actually, I've just realised that you're talking about having this sort of like open-ended game with lots of things you can do, but then at some point when you're done, just sort of wrapping it up with plot. Without intending to, that's exactly what Dragon's Dogma did. And I think we did do a podcast.
We did, where we talked about...
Well, did I explain to you what happens?
You did after the cast and encourage people to chase down the actual ending if they're interested.
But that's the sort of thing that ends up being this really weird sparse game where basically you do whatever you want. You can just, at any point you can be like, I'm bored of being a magician, I want to be a mad archer, and then you just go around killing things for a long time, and then when you kind of think like, I've had enough of this, you just go and end the game, and it just has this incredible out of nowhere sequence of plot twist madness and just wraps itself up in a way which is just mind-blowingly strange.
I mean, so another JRPG that sort of ties in with what we're talking about is Persona 4, where, which is amazing. If you like JRPGs and haven't played Persona, go do look at it. It's a year at school and you're wandering around making friendships, playing this like Harvest Moon like life sim, except the friendships you make allow you to summon more powerful demons to fight evil. And that is
like Buffy.
Yes, except it's far more mercenary than Buffy, because Buffy just needs friends and it's quite human. Whereas in Persona, it's like you're hanging out with that basketball friend of yours, and you're like, "Come on, you son of a bitch! I hung out with you 3 weeks straight." And then a box goes up, and you feel that your ability to create personas of the basketball.
Isn't this back to like the Harvest Moon like methodology?
Oh, completely. But the thing that Persona,
sometimes you make friends with someone for ages, expecting the thing you'll get is to be really good. You get it, it's like you're rubbish. You just drop that friend.
Harvest Moon is awful, and I've only now realised it. But the thing about Persona is that at the end of the year, because it is just a year of school life, and you go through summer, winter, and there's lovely seasonal sort of art in the game. But when you finish it, I mean, this I don't think is a spoiler, but you have to take the train home at the end of the game. And that game's ending after everything that's happened in this magical year is just all these people you've met saying goodbye to you. And that's the kind of thing that I imagine Animal Crossing or Harvest Moon or Minecraft might benefit from if we are looking to give them a narrative wrapper, which is you have a limited time in this magical world. What are you going to do here? Viva Pinata, similarly. Hey, you've been given the keys to a magical wonderland. You've got 2 years. I'd like
a game to do something which things do not have the balls to do generally, which is it's kind of a mild spoiler for a show from quite a while ago, but it was 6 Feet Under ended basically by when the last series happened, and I wonder, I mean, it was a fantastic ending. I cried like a baby.
On the off chance anyone at home is watching 6 Feet Under, Matt, you have 30 seconds to deliver.
All that happens is it just basically has this ending where you just see what happens to all the other characters for the rest of their lives. So it just has this montage, but then it means you see like all of their lives, and you kind of watch them all like dying one by one because they all just grow old and die, and it's incredibly moving. But this thing that's over there, but basically it's that idea of like having the balls to just go, this game, this series, it's done now. And to have that kind of finality of just doing everything and making it so that you can't do anything else. It's done.
Well, that's I do want to ask you what the second gardening game you've been playing was, Pip. But before that, I want to mention similarly Cowboy Bebop, which was an award-winning anime series, of course. I can't say that. That is a spoiler.
That is a spoiler.
But it does something at the end, which the creators did because they were well aware that anime series in Japan are under intense pressure to continue the series. So if anime that has a particularly apocalyptic ending, it's because those creators don't want the characters to be reused and repurposed in series. But after my overwhelming sidetrack into narrative, what was the other gardening game you played, Pip, and was it any good? Was it better than Viridi?
I think it was called Plant Tycoon. It's really old. It's like 8 years old on PC and like even older on like Palm OS.
I would play I love Tycoon related management-y games.
Yeah, well, essentially, so you've got like a greenhouse with loads of benches covered in plant pots, and what you're doing is you start off with some common seeds and then grow them.
What's a common seed?
So just for like really basic plants, and then you get like rarer and
What's
rarer.
What's a basic plant?
Well, because this is about modifying.
Really
this is like modifying plant DNA in this game, right? Did you say?
This is and so I can't remember the names of them. I think they're probably just like wallflowers and daisies, or the game equivalent of them. I really can't remember, but and then what you do is once they've flowered, you can actually cross-pollinate them to create different types of plant, and with different traits that they would take from both of the parent plants.
Okay, like height or colour.
So it's stuff like pattern and leaves. I think those are the two different sort of variables in this. And you just sort of breed them again and again with different things. You can buy seeds from the little in-game shop. It's not microtransactions, it's just stuff that you've earned in-game. And eventually you'll need to sort of, level up your tools so that you've got better quality soil for like the more picky, sort of rarer exotic plants.
Did you enjoy
things
it?
Like that. I really did actually, and it's because it was that pleasure of a time management sim where you're actually sort of ticking off objectives or things that you've set yourself, but they are also part of a list that you could in theory 100%. And like your overall aim is to breed the 6 rarest plants in the game from like a mythical isle and whatever.
I do want to know that mythical isle.
Exactly. So I was chipping away at that, and it was open in a window while I was doing my work, and I was sort of just going back to it every now and again, and that I found that a lot more therapeutic. I never lost my temper with that.
So is it the type of game that does kind of run in the background a bit and you occasionally kind of potter and click on it?
It does. It plays while you're not there as well, which is annoying because I kept coming back to find dead plants because I would forget to mess with the time settings.
The ghost of Farmville is back again. It's
that kind of thing. But it was never like a catastrophic problem. It was just a bit sad, and it meant that I stopped going back after a while because I was like, oh, everything's dead. It was a bit like with Animal Crossing. I was like, I've got to do so much weeding. God,
I found that with Animal Crossing actually, is at first the whole weeds thing is like, because you go every day and you take pride in the fact that you go and you tear them out and you keep it all neat. Yeah. But then after you've not been there for a few weeks, you just don't want to go back because you're like, I haven't. It's like the shame of, like you've broken something, so you hide it in a cupboard and you kind of don't want to open that cupboard again because you.
Well, the problem with the cupboards in Animal Crossing is then if you move them, you've got cockroaches. So it's a big problem. I got weird with Animal Crossing though. I 100%ed it in some ways.
Wow.
Like it was that mindset of I need to 100%.
I need all of the hats.
On what format?
It was on GameCube, and it got to the point where it was kind of a shared game. And so my boyfriend at the time also had a house there, and his housemate.
What did you do to his house?
And
did you sell everything in his
friend,
house?
I think, had a house. So I paid off all of their mortgages as well because I couldn't bear to have things unfinished.
Can't bear to have them in debt.
But so it was his game. It wasn't even my game, and yet there was a gold statue of me near the train station. And then there was like a silver statue of him, and then like a bronze statue of his. It was just like I got really weird about it. Anyway, so I was really enjoying the time management and the just the I've got another new plant and I can level this thing up and stuff, but it still wasn't quite what I was looking for. And I think what I was looking for is more a selection box, not a selection box, like just a okay, so
I like Animal Crossing, but it'd be better if it was a selection box of fine chocolates.
What I mean is, in playing both of those gardening games, what I was actually looking for was something that I could have in another monitor that would be soothing in some capacity, but without the focus that a time management game requires. And so I was thinking that actually what I was looking for was just a way to put in one window a lot of those techniques that people use to sort of soothe you, or, you know, so having pink noise playing as the soundtrack to whatever it was, and having, you know, a thing that grows, just because that can be quite unexpected, and you know, you'd look over every now and again and progress would somehow have happened. And, you know, I was trying to work out what elements I would put together in this thing.
To sort of slide like off topic slightly into kind of just the real world, I find myself increasingly at the moment like trying to work out ways to relax myself on a day-to-day basis, because I find that it's a combination of the fact that I focus on things too much and I get trapped in caffeine After Effects loops, but I find increasingly just spending all of my time as a human on electronic devices, there's something about them, there's something about the speed at which you can use them and sort of operate things in a way that is far faster than you can operate anything with the rest of your body normally. You know, it does some weird stuff to your brain. I find the need to slow it down. But the interesting thing I find is the same thing of being like, but I still love using them. And so actually I'm constantly looking. I can find things on my computer. I can find games to do all sorts of things. I can find games to make me emotional. I can find games to make me excited or to make me kind of focus. But one of the things I'm always looking for is like ways I can use digital things to make me feel relaxed. You know, actually, maybe I just need to go outside and look at the sky for a bit.
You could do. My partner is really good at that, because she actually is able to do something which I can't, which is she will have a game that she was playing like 5, 6, 7 years ago and will still play it. Like a Castlevania Symphony of the Night, which was I think the best Castlevania. It was on PlayStation, but she still plays that, and she just is able to drill it, and that's the game she goes back to because it's so familiar. It's almost like a reflexive habit, but it's just like a warm bath.
Maybe I just need to get the GameCube out and play some more Phantasy Star Online.
Well, maybe you don't. I can't do this stuff. For me, like the only thing I have in terms of looking for games that soothe me, I am constantly on a quest to find good shit iPad management games. Like managing a farm, a restaurant. I'll do whatever.
I love them as well, but it's hard. Sorry.
Oh no, I was going to say there is a third gardening game called My Organic Garden.
How many of these have you got?
Just don't ask. And it was really great. It was like a Japanese indie game, and I picked it up, and it's basically it's a clicker game. You click on things to water them, you click on them to harvest them. You know, it's that level of interaction, and some people will hate it and completely bounce off it. I loved the highly stylized look of the plants. They were gorgeous, and I really loved like the interaction, and also just the fact that it was slightly weird, because what you're growing isn't fruit, you're growing human organs.
I saw this on Steam and almost bought it. Yeah, this is a super weird looking anime game where you just have a garden, but you're growing like lungs.
You're growing hearts, and you're growing kidneys,
but
and
then
you're growing livers.
From what I was looking at, it's like the woman you deliver these things to is
colons.
Like perfectly civil about, oh, this is a marvellous heart.
Yeah.
Yeah, God, no, I'll play this if it's good, yeah.
I really, really liked it, actually. I really liked it. Like, there was a bit where it kind of lost its way, but it was because I couldn't quite figure out how to grow the excellent version of like a heart. Because you have to get into pruning. So
wow, right, yeah, that's
anyway.
dark.
But it was really, really interesting, and I loved the style of it, and I loved just that it was slightly odd without being self-consciously wacky.
Yeah.
And like,
oh man,
so this is how we chill out, is it? We take a knife to someone else's body organs.
I will take my knife to other things, because I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the best iPad management type simulation, which is called Cook Serve Delicious.
They have that on Steam as well.
It just came out on Steam. It's also on iPad.
It's been out on Steam for a little while.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, yeah, you're right. But also, they've announced Cook Serve Delicious 2, which will be out on PlayStation, which I could not be more excited about.
Trailer's amazing.
Yeah, it's great. Cook Serve Delicious, I must have talked.
You've told me about it, but I'm not sure if we've done it on the podcast.
Well, I'll give people the quick heads up. It's you run a restaurant in a place called Sherry Soda Towers. It's fictional, and the world within it is perfect, because it's kind of just boring enough that you don't notice it and you zone out. Then you notice that super weird stuff is happening. Like, for example, one of the first things you might get on your menu is wine, and office workers will come in and order wine at like 8 a.m. And then little things like, it gets increasingly odd. The food descriptions are all hilarious, and then There's a dating sim in it. Like, and you don't know why the hell this is there, but you get emails every day to your restaurant's inbox. It's like, hey, you signed up to dating. Do you want to date this person? You're like, yeah. And because the actual game is just managing orders in a super high octane, like very, like, you just zone out and you play it.
Soup is my nemesis.
Soup is a nightmare. Pasta's really tough as well. But you can...
That's not realistic. Soup is really easy. I made soup in 10 minutes today.
There's no processor in the game. There's no food processor. You have to chop everything.
Oh, that's less fun.
Yeah. So here's the way the dating works. It's like you're making your soup, and then like Matt, you're chopping 4 celery, and you're trying to remember celery, tomatoes.
Why can't more games have magic
onions?
Mixes?
I know. But then you get a text, and it pops up where all the food orders pop up, and you have to click on it, and then you get a text from whoever you're dating, and you have to pick the right response.
Yeah.
But then if the responses you have to choose from are yes and no, you have to read the entire message from them. And in order to get through the dating, you have to correctly respond to their texts for like a week running.
What? Has it not got like... I mean, that's not how people work in real life.
I know, and if you don't respond in 5 minutes, they're out of there. They're just living.
I don't want to go out with someone like that.
Well, tell you what, you won't have to for very long. But no, Cook Serve Delicious is just stunning. It's like wonderful mini games, really satisfying restaurant development.
I might check that out tonight, actually.
It's awesome.
You know what? I think
so
I'm going
good.
to check it out on tablet because I played it on PC, and that used to actually stress me out because of like things like the soda machine where you would have to... It's so many buttons.
The soda machine is like you have to decide size and ice.
You have to do the size, you have to work out which of the nozzles you need, you have to to ice
also
or not.
just multi-touch and stuff on the iPad it's really nice.
Yeah.
I actually, to be honest, lots of people kind of roll their eyes at like, iPad games, iPhone games and that, but I found that now largely we are sort of getting into quite a sweet spot where there's not tons of great stuff, but there's a lot of good stuff now which has got past the verge of just being like free but then full of microtransactions, and now you got a lot of stuff which is just like either a couple of quid or it's like you play it and then it goes, do you want to give us a couple of quid, and then you're done.
Puzzlecraft is a good one. Puzzlecraft is, I think, free or extremely cheap, and you never have to use the microtransactions to finish it.
I really want to check out Loot and Legends, which is basically Card Hunter. But it's kind of Card Hunter 2. It's sort of a sequel.
Loot and Legends, did that come out like a week ago?
Yeah, I really want to check that out.
Yeah, it's got like a kind of sci-fi glaze to it.
Maybe not. I don't know. I know it's a kind of sort of sequel to Card Hunter.
Okay.
Card Hunter is really lovely. It's basically, it was kind of a drafting card game mixed with a kind of traditional little board game thing. But it has a really kind of fun twist in the idea that actually all of the little people you're moving around are little like kind of like cardboard figurines, and they like with plastic bases.
And there's a meta plot of
you,
the people who play those characters.
Like the bad guy is Gary, and Gary is your friend who is the dungeon master.
Yeah. And he loves the girl who delivers pizzas.
Yeah, so apparently Loot and Legends is basically, they've kind of refined that a bit. They've made it so that it's more about the equipment and less about like having to focus on the cards behind it. And apparently it's quite funny in the plot. Like you have like the Gary kind of at one point like sticks a piece of cardboard to like a chess piece and puts it on the board.
Oh, really?
It's like kind of
something you have to fight.
So that's something you have to fight. It's like he just made up a monster or something.
Oh, that's awesome.
So I don't know. I thought that Card Hunter at the time, because it came out. I remember Card Hunter came out at the same time as Hearthstone, and I thought Card Hunter was really strong and really interesting.
It really suffered from coming out that time, didn't it?
And it was like I played Hearthstone and thought it's okay, but there's not a lot to it. Card Hunter felt really robust and really interesting, and I don't know how well it did. I hope it did okay.
I think because a fair few of my friends were aware of it and had started playing it and were like really taken with it.
Yeah.
But then it did feel like that was not the card game that everyone
I know,
was
right?
talking about.
And I got really into playing it competitively as well. I was playing it every lunchtime. I had a really fun head-to-head mode. I love the way that because the equipment, basically it was a deck building game, but your equipment had all of the cards in them. So it meant you had this thing of, you might have an amazing sword that would have like a couple of really dangerous attacks in it. But it would also have one really bad card in it. As soon as you do that,
up your hand.
you then like fall over or something. But it became this thing of when you were fighting people, if suddenly they just like tripped over or like did something bad or hurt themselves, you'd be like, well, stay the hell away from them. Because you'd know that they had something good. Or, conversely, somebody would just walk up to you and just one hit you and you go, whoa. But then you'd be safe in the knowledge that chances are in a few turns something bad was going to happen to them out of the blue. So it was smart. So I'm going to check out Loot Legends because it's made by the same people, and they seem like really smart designers, and I want to check out more of their stuff.
I've been playing again quickly, but a good iPad game that came out recently called The Executive. It might just be called Executive. You ready for this, guys? You run a mining company, but there are werewolves, so you have to kind of It's kind of a sort of, what's the word?
Hang on. You're running the mining company and there are werewolves that work for you, and there are
I don't know,
werewolves.
Pip. There's a lot going on. Sometimes you go into the sewers and there are big frogs with swords. But the point is, you run around these levels and you kind of do Infinity Blade. Was that the name of the epic? Yeah. So you have a very simple swiping combat system. You have stunts that you do in a kind of endless runner style. It's kind of a big mix of all the good iPad genres. One-touch fighter and then also endless runner. And then when you come out of these ridiculous levels where you run around your office clearing out the werewolves, you've got some money to invest in the mining company. So maybe you buy a geologist. And then that's more money that's ticking up in the background while you're playing.
This sounds like a dream that you had.
It is the weirdest, most wonderful
like something
thing.
I would really love playing.
No, it's great. And it's all self-aware. Like, it's just the weirdest. Like, there's no explanation for any. The intro
It doesn't need to be.
No, the intro cutscene is you in a really dark, dank office, and then a coworker comes over and beats up the Coke machine. Then he actually destroys the Coke machine, then turns into a werewolf. Then you fight him, and then you're away.
Amazing. I've got a lot of stuff I want to check out on iPad, it seems like, because it's weird. Like, a lot of people kind of turn their nose up at that stuff, but I find actually now that developers actually are using touch controls in a way which feels natural and not just trying to do crazy, like, it's like you've got twin sticks if you use the corners and all that nonsense. I find they're quite tactile to play, but I also find that they're great to play when you're absolutely fried, and I spend a lot of my life absolutely fried, because it's not that they're not mentally taxing, it's that you don't have to use your hands that much either. You can just touch that. And
you always go on the record on this cast as saying that the 3DS is the best portable console. I disagree if you don't have a PC or you don't play games on the PC, because the iPad now has FTL, it has XCOM, it has 80 days.
Yeah, that's true.
Like, it has, I think, even more strong games.
But I'd say an iPad is not as, I mean, you've got a mini one maybe, but I don't think it's as portable, you know. I mean, in my mind, a portable thing is something I can put in my pocket. So
I don't like having a big bulge in my pocket. I much prefer having nothing at all.
Thank God. I thought we had to stop the podcast there. I had my hand over the emergency button. It was good to go. All right, well, I reckon what we're going to do now is we'll jump into some questions a bit earlier than usual, because you two have both played Everybody's Focked Off to the Rapture.
Everyone's got to the ending.
Everyone's gone to the ending.
Except Matt.
And I haven't played it at all, so I want you guys to be able to talk about that, but I don't want to hear anything about it, because I am actually going to check it out. So we'll do some questions, and then I will just leave.
Shall we call that bit Everyone's Gone to the Rapture, except Matt, who's gone to the kitchen?
Everybody's gone. Matt's gone to the kitchen.
We'll do a jingle when the time is right.
Fantastic. But before that, actually, you might as well talk about it. Let's talk about the elephant in the room. It's not really an elephant in the room, but let's pretend it is. Cool Ghosts is a new thing. We've teased this for a couple of weeks, me and Quinns. You might notice that Daft Souls.
I regret that yelp so much already.
It's fine.
Please, go on.
Can't take it back. We've teased it for a few weeks. You might notice that Daft Souls is now a weekly podcast properly, something which I never committed to in the first place, but now we're trying to do properly. So it will be weekly, and it will always be me and Quinns and guests. And we're quite excited about that. But it's part of a brand new, bigger thing called Cool Ghosts.
Yes, if you listen to this podcast and you like Matt and my video stuff at all, know now that we are united on a very cool YouTube-related initiative. We're just going to make funny or interesting videos about video games, all powered by Patreon. It's kind of like a sort of Voltron-like adaptation of Matt's YouTube Patreon in the past. Now there's two of us.
Absolutely, and Daft Souls is a part of that. So if you enjoy Daft Souls and you've not watched our video stuff, you should go and check out some of the stuff on Cool Ghosts, because it's probably right up your street. And if not, if you just really enjoy Daft Souls, then you might consider just chucking in a few quid to the Patreon, because it's all part of the same big old house.
Because you should at least fund Matt's cooking, because every time we do Daft Souls, we come here and Matt cooks a thing.
I do. It's the way of getting people to come around to my house.
We had soup, which, if Cook Serve Delicious has taught me anything, was quite the effort.
Incredibly healthy soup. It had lots of turmeric in it. But yeah, Cool Ghost, check it out. You can check it out at coolghost.net, because we actually have a website where you can post comments about stuff. And actually, if you're interested in the podcast, I will put up the video version of the YouTube one every week, and there'll be comments about that there, so people can talk about the episodes all in one place. So that's coolghost.net, and obviously, patreon.com/Cool Ghosts if you want to see more. Even the video we made explaining what it is actually probably quite funny.
Yeah, actually. If you don't yet feel convinced to give us money, go to patreon.com/Cool Ghosts. There's that URL again. And then look at me and Matt in the rain for ages.
Yeah, and actually also you doing a fantastic video about Satellite Rain, which is a kind of syndicate style thing.
I've never talked about that.
We'll get you to talk about that next week. That's fine, nicely. And I put up a video of The Witcher 3, which is mostly me walking around in a silver wig, looking like a tit, with lots of amazing special effects.
I've seen bits of that one, it's good.
Yeah. There's a part of that video there's a part of that video which you haven't seen, Pip, because you haven't seen that bit yet. One of the bits of that video, my girlfriend came home at that exact moment. I won't tell you which part of the video it is, but what I will say is it was the worst possible time. And my girlfriend came home, and me and Quentin both went, oh God. So that's just a little tidbit of info for you. If you've already seen the video, then you'll probably be laughing and knowing exactly when that was. But
this is some good teasing. This is some good promo.
It's really something. I think people are going to be taken aback. It's probably not safe to watch at work. Anyway.
Rich in protein. No.
Proteins. Good Lord.
No, it was a reach.
Go to hell for that
Throw
one.
me a question, Matthew.
All right, William Cottingham.
Hey, William.
Asks. Actually, this is kind of interesting because we have actually just talked about this for the whole podcast. But it'd be nice to give someone a brief recommendation on this basis.
Summary.
Recommendations for short but sweet games to dip in and out of when time is at a premium but you want to relax a bit. Isn't that funny?
I would... we haven't actually mentioned 80 Days, which is always I will point to.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Is it Simogo who make the iPad games like Device 6?
Yes.
Device 6
is
and
amazing.
Sailor's Dream?
Sailor's Dream. I didn't get on with Sailor's Dream particularly.
Not me either. Then also Night in the Woods, is it? No, not Night in the Woods. That's the movie.
I've heard so much about Device 6. I need to check that out as well.
It's interesting. It's soothing. Simogo
I got the
soothing.
soundtrack. I was so into it.
But wait, guys, let's assume he doesn't have an iPad.
Okay.
I think it's pretty difficult to relax on a console in general.
I think it is. I think it's something about the nature of the setup. They've got all these buttons. They feel how to use them.
I said this last week or the week before. City Skylines is the most relaxing thing.
Yeah, fair enough. I know it's a game that everyone's played, but I think Monument Valley is really, really nice for that. It's especially for short bursts because you can complete a level in like 2 or 3 minutes if you're not, if you're good at puzzles.
I said City Skylines and Pip pulled a face like...
Oh no, I was just thinking also Alpha Bear.
Oh yeah,
but then I wasn't sure whether that was for short spaces of time because I just play it for ages.
I immediately regretted saying the City Skyline thing because you can't play 5 minutes of that game. You have to play 5 hours. We've shat the bed on this question, Matt. Give us another one.
Okay, that question has been abandoned.
It started off strong. Maybe
lost
go
10
for
points.
like the first recommendation or something.
You can still get enough points for the Silver Chase car chase bonus round, or you might win a Fiat Punto.
Come on, Pip.
Come on, Pip.
I
have no other way to get home tonight.
Bryce Walton asks, do you think a developer or indie studio could find success on Patreon?
They haven't they?
Yeah, I'm sure they have.
I was going to say, have they not tried? It strikes me that would not be a scenario that hadn't been tried.
I mean, I know a number of smaller independent developers do like everything I make. Like Avery McDowell, game designer, a friend of mine, makes okay money on Patreon, I think. But then also big Kickstarters. What's this guy? What's his name?
It's kind of the same thing.
I
mean, I guess, if you're a single person, you're making something, then I guess sort of. But I mean, really, in a way
it depends what you would offer backers in that scenario. Like whether it would be devlogs or whether it would be actual snippets of...
I think if you're the sort of person where you make lots of small little projects and you're constantly just making little experimental things, then it's perfect for that. But really, like, the best example of this sort of thing is Nuclear Throne, and the fact that, like, Nuclear Throne is not on Patreon, but it's basically had this incredibly community-led thing of people getting in early and playing it very gradually and having the same level of back and forth that you'd expect with a kind of crowdfunding monthly thing. They haven't been paid monthly, but they've been doing so many updates and having so much interaction with the community that they may as well have done. It's basically that people pay once to become a part of that community.
Yeah, it's the same with a lot of games I've been enjoying. Darkest Dungeon, Invisible Ink, Satellite Rain, all of these sort of like Kickstarter related or early access games that then just...
Although you were saying the other day, that's crazy about the fact that Darkest Dungeon, they've made some major changes.
Yeah, this was interesting. So Darkest Dungeon added a couple of things in the latest patch, Corpse and Hound update, which includes now when monsters die, they leave corpses, which means you can no longer shuffle the monsters' party order by like killing all the things at the front, so the ranged units now in front. That will make a lot more sense if you played Darkest Dungeon. But now there are corpses, things are more rigid, and people, as I understand it, developed play styles or saw the game as a certain thing. Yeah. And this so radically changes the strategy that players just revolted because I guess they were emotionally invested in this earlier version of the game. So the developers created an option to toggle this stuff off, which is, I think, the first time that Kickstarter or backer pressure of a project has actually warped the direction. It's especially weird in Darkest Dungeon as well because the developers create the most insanely detailed patch notes you've ever seen in terms of why they do everything.
Yeah. I don't like that. I don't like that they've had to... The thing is, you've got to trust designers to do what they do, and for people to go, oh, we don't like this, it's like, yeah, but it's not a finished game. So when somebody makes a change like that, you have to trust that when they've finished everything else, it will work and make sense. And if they've now got the option to toggle it, I kind of hope that that's maybe a soft thing, and then you kind of wonder that then it's almost that thing of they've gone off onto, like, it's created a branch, they've created a new branch of the game.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, what are they working on now? Which one are they going to focus on?
It's not tenable as well, because if they create this branch whereby, okay, you can toggle off corpses, but the balancing that they're going to be doing until that game comes out and all the additions is going to be relating to the corpse-filled, shit-strewn version of the game. But then
that's the thing, are people going to continue to go, we'll do the balancing for this one as well?
They can't.
Of course they can't. But
it's certainly an interesting... that cannot have been a good day in that dev studio.
No, it really can't. But I think it's a fascinating thing, because that's always one of the big questions that I have. People ask me about, like, things like Patreon, like, oh, what do you think about the fact that people, like, all of these things, like all these crowdfunding things, are being like, what do you do when your audience say they want something different? And the answer always has to be, well, you have to ignore them in a way. But then obviously it's difficult when you've got especially a big audience like that. Kind of crazy. I hope it pans out all right, because I'm really excited about that game, but I don't want it to become.
It'll be fine.
I'm sure it'll be fine.
There's a talented developers doing very well for themselves.
Yeah, no, they'll be good. Andrew Haining asks, why does Kojima seem to get it? This is a bit of a contentious question, but I'm not sure. I'll ask the question.
Here we go.
Basically. I don't know, because I haven't picked this one out because I necessarily 100% agree with the sentiment. But here we go.
Does this question have the word arsehole in it?
No, it doesn't. Arsehole's a lot less harsh in a way. Why does Kojima seem to get a pass from most press for being a raging misogynist, they ask?
Ooh.
I don't think raging misogynist is probably a fair term.
I mean, misogynist, oh God, again, minefield territory, but misogynist implies hating women, whereas Kojima's staggering childlike cluelessness of what women are, I mean...
He's just constantly posting pictures and going, boobs, lol. It's like, he's not, I think raging misogynist, I think a bit misogynistic is probably fairer than raging.
Tell you what though, Matt, look, there's a woman right here. She can answer for all of womankind.
See, this is the part where I'm not only not going to do that, I'm going to be even worse than useless, because essentially I have managed to not know what this is about.
Okay.
Because quite
I think
frankly,
it's kind of a consistent thing in the industry, and the fact that everyone goes, oh, he's an auteur, he's a genius, and then you're on Twitter and he's like poking like a mouse mat that has like boobs at the bottom of it and going, lol, boobs. And you're like, that's kind of a bit weird. All right, fine. But then the whole thing with the fact there's a character in The Phantom Pain called Quiet, who's a sniper who's not really wearing many clothes, and it was when it first came out, it was like, really? And then they started.
You're forgetting the most key thing, which was in was it Peace Walker? I think there was.
Oh God, yeah.
Peace Walker had a girl with a grenade in her fanny.
Yeah, no, that wasn't Peace Walker. That was what's it called? That was
MGS : what's it called?
No, it was the recent thing.
The fanny thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was in the mini game that came out before this. Oh, what's the bloody name?
Oh, Ground Zeroes?
Yes, it was in Ground Zeroes. The Peace Walker had a bit where you had to spy on a young girl in a bikini, and she was like 13 or something as well. So there's lots of weird shit in those games.
I mean,
see, this is the thing. It's a series that that has never interested me, and because of the buzz that's around the upcoming game, I was like, oh, okay, well, maybe I'll give the series a go. But that's why I'm so clueless on this front, because it's not a bit of gaming, or he's not a creator.
No, totally.
I've taken sort of
totally, and it seems that thing is that it's because it's become a series which is so enveloped in very complex and thick plot. It seems that really the only people who are still invested in it are people who've managed to keep up with that quite religiously, and they're probably maybe a bit more willing to forgive.
I mean, I would say that that's definitely there's a schism in the industry. If you care deeply about Kojima's games and you're a fan, you're likely to look past the misogyny, and if you're not a fan of MGS, you're not going to be clued up on why it's sexist. It's
really not even a question about Kojima. It's the question may as well be, why is it that auteurs get a free pass for being like weird and a bit creepy? And it's like, it happens consistently in almost every medium.
Yeah.
Sometimes to the point of like, look in the world of film, you've got people like Woody Allen, Roman Polanski, like some seriously shady stuff going on. But people just ignore it because they're auteurs. So it's more a question about, what the fuck is auteur about?
Well, I mean, what you're talking there, what you're describing there is like these people generate money, and that causes an amount of blindsidedness.
It's complicated, yeah. But lots of people have been talking about this stuff. There are quite a few questions. I won't go into all of them, but there's lots of stuff at the moment, and people have been talking about this stuff and talking about Konami being like really.
I mean, Konami does sound
unethical
like the. Did we discuss this?
No.
Oh man, what people should know is that there was a stunning. Oh god, I forget the Japanese newspaper that did reveal the. You catch this, Pip? The working conditions in Konami. They did a big expose, and it included things like.
Better or worse than Amazon, according to
worse. That. Certainly, I would rather work for Amazon than. So Amazon don't. If they dislike the work you do, or you do unpolitical things, is that a word? Unpolitical?
Things that aren't in like
impolitic
things for Konami, you can get demoted to potentially work in their factory from whatever creative thing you were doing. If you take a long lunch, they might announce your name over the AP system to the entire office. Preposterous, like, and on top of all the claims of overtime and everything, it sounds like working for a Disney villain, frankly.
Yeah, so this is an interesting question, and lots of people have been saying, like, is it... So I found it interesting that there's a bunch of questions about, alongside all the excitement for this game, I think it's really interesting that we have all of these other questions coming up. Like, you have some people being like, is it moral for me to be buying a game made by an auteur that keeps putting this really, really questionable stuff in games? And also people going, is it moral for me to be buying a game from a company which has just been exposed as behaving in a way which is arguably extremely unethical? And the answer is, I don't know.
Well, that's for you to decide.
That's for you to decide.
Certainly, it would make sense for you to not buy from companies with unethical business practices. That's pretty sad.
Yeah, but then it's a difficult thing with the world, and the fact that if you want to get down that path, then you have to very carefully think about your entire life, because Amazon, crazy.
Yeah,
but they do get things to you in boxes very quickly.
Big boxes, though.
Too big, I think. So yeah, that's kind of the long and short on that one. You could talk about it for a long time, but it's not. It all comes down to.
There was a Solid Snake related big cardboard box joke there. We sailed past it.
We just sailed past it. It's probably for the best. I think it's not a time for jokes. Everything's gone dark. Flatfoot Fox asks, what transportation methods from a video game do you wish were commonplace in real life?
Oh, obvious answer, portal guns, but I think we can do better than that.
I have always been very fond of the ocarina as a transportation device. Of just being able to play a song about owls or something and then just getting whisked away by a bunch of feathers.
Some game had
that.
Really good motorbike, and it's killing me trying to remember what it is. You guys talk while I...
What sort of motorbike?
I don't know, a cool one you could drive from A to B. I guess that describes most motorbikes.
It sounds like a motorbike.
Possibly all of them. Oh,
it wasn't a Dreamcast game, was it?
No, I don't know.
Because there was that Dreamcast game where you were a hitman, or like a kind of dog bounty hunter style guy who had a motorbike. I never played it, but apparently it was amazing.
Oh, God damn it.
What about you, Pip?
I don't know, because the thing that I really enjoy, I really enjoyed driving in GTA, but cars are a commonplace real thing that exists in real life.
Yeah, but
I wish I could still do a lot more driving than I do, because obviously I live in London and don't have the financial, or it's stupid to have a car.
I'm gonna get a nosebleed.
When I go home,
you're thinking too much.
I get to drive around like little country roads, listening to the radio on my own.
I miss my car, my real life car, but tragically I cannot remember any of the cars that I've missed in any video games, and I've loved so many of them.
I had a car that I loved so much in GTA 5. It was this beautiful blue. I'm closing my eyes to picture it right now. It's the header image on my Twitter.
Really?
Yeah, seriously.
What's your Twitter for people at home to go and check out?
It's at Philippa War, 1L, 2 P's, 2 R's.
Wow.
But it's just this gorgeous thing, and I was playing multiplayer, and my friends thought it would be really funny to bully me by running me off the road and then shooting rocket launchers and flares at my car.
Does that permanently destroy it then?
It exploded.
That is a nice car, so I thought I'd look it up.
Yeah, it exploded my car, and then at that point, my lovely friends discovered that I hadn't been able to afford insurance when I'd got it. So it was gone forever. And it was one of the rarer ones that spawn in the game, I think. And so we spent the next 2 hours with them feeling terrible and trying to find me a car.
Oh.
And then waiting in all of the spawn points to try and steal it from someone else.
I think the point at which I sort of fell out of love with GTA 5 actually, because I was I was obviously, as a lot of people were, enamoured by the world. Was actually to do with cars. It was to do with the fact that I parked a car in my garage in the game, and then it had sort of glitched, and then a different car was there instead of my car. Ooh. And I was like, this isn't my car.
Yeah.
And I was just so annoyed because I really loved that car that I'd stolen. Obviously,
I get like that now because like I've got a replacement and it's the same colour because I've sprayed it the same colour. It's not the same. It's not my car.
But I was driving really carefully as well. I was trying to look after it. I think it's fair though because you're like, oh, it's boring to say car, but actually what you mean is video game car because the thing is the way you can drive cars in video games, you could never drive a car like that in the real world. You can't choose whether or not you care about red lights.
No, there
like,
is that.
It's like purely optional.
Do you not like play GTA where you actually just abide by all of the traffic
Yeah, I do that for
rules
exactly 5 minutes every time I buy a new GTA game and then lose something happens that makes me lose it.
I think it's because the speed that it lets you drive at is faster than the other cars that are actually, like it doesn't let you easily take account of the speed limit.
Yeah, I agree. It's slow
and
to get
so
around.
it feels frustrating.
It's fun up until the point that you accidentally crash into the other car when you're supposed to be stopping it.
Yeah, exactly. And then the illusion is broken.
I'm driving through
I've come up with one of the hundreds of vehicles I must have loved, and this is going to cause about 7 people out there to go, yes! And then put their arms up in the air and crash their car because they're listening to this in a commute. It's the Warhawk from Warhawk. PS3, download only. Secret best game on the PS3.
Yeah, I've heard good things about it.
It's stunningly good, but the Warhawks themselves were just like little vertical takeoff things that you could get around incredibly quickly at, and they were just so situational, so beautiful.
Interesting.
But that felt like an interesting of a cue to make me stop talking about Warhawks from the download-only game Warhawk. They're interesting because you look at the sky, and if it's filled with enemy Warhawks, then it's just going to be a shit show. It's like traffic. You're not going to get anywhere in the Warhawk. But if there are no Warhawks, you just take off, and you just rule the sky. And it's a wonderful moment of you just gauge. It's like you look out your window, you see how much traffic there is, and you go, I'll take the Warhawk out today. And then you bomb people.
Although finally, actually, I've always had a very big fondness for the ship from Skies of Arcadia. I think that game...
The pirate ship?
Yeah, just that game, like, I never felt so, like... I don't know. That game really did some magical stuff. I think the fact that you use the boat for ships as well, and... No, that's not a sentence.
A boat.
You use the boat, the flying boat ship thing, for boss fights as well, and like fighting other ships. And those fights were really hard. And it meant that you just had this sort of pride in it, in the way that, because you're always the underdog and you're always taking on these huge things, like the equivalent of like having to take on like a mega weapon from Final Fantasy.
Oh yeah,
but just halfway through the game, like constantly just being like, no, fight this massive thing, and it just keeps killing you in one hit. And
sounds great.
It was really horribly hard, but I fell in love with that ship. It was like my home.
Ships, homes, they're good. Games do them well.
I'm trying to work out whether I would have loved or hated the monkey balls from Monkey Ball in real life. It was basically zorbing, wasn't it?
Hell.
Zorbing with flying.
It does sound like hell.
Zorbing, but with like an inch of plastic around you
and being a monkey.
We can make you large hamster ball.
Shall we find a park with a hill and just play Monkey Ball in real life?
This is how we die, Pip.
That's probably how Pip dies. And
Pip dies and we watch.
And then upload it as part of Cool Ghost. I should be your first Cool Ghost.
You could be our first viral. Wow.
That's how we get the big time killing people. Okay. Let's see how we're doing for time. Yeah, kind of running out of time. Do you have one more question? Or?
One more question, and then we'll do everyone's gone to the Rapture except Matt, who's gone to the kitchen.
Okay. Well, I'll do this really one quickly then. Matthew Arnott, because he was asking me today, he was like, when can I ask questions for Daft Souls? And I was like, now. And so he did it.
That's quite efficient as a system.
He actually just timed it really well. I was just about to ask for questions, and I was like, right. So I thought then it would be rude not to answer his question after we'd had that little moment on Twitter. It says, how well do you think you'll retain what you've learned from tutorials for Game Maker, etc.? He's also about how he's been using Unity and he's been trying to get into it. Had quite a lot of questions, people talking about this sort of thing. Lots of people trying to have a little play with code. And he was saying that he's just found that it's mostly seems to be just copy and pasting things and not really as much learning. Which I think, there's some truth to that, because everyone I've talked to who is actually working on dev at all says, that's kind of the majority of what code is. It's just copying and pasting other people's things for a little while. But then the weird thing is, you copy and paste something, you don't understand it. That kind of vaguely terrifies you, because you just leave this thing sitting there like an alien contraption in the middle of your car.
Like a weird sort of egg that might hatch.
Yeah, and the egg is somehow making your car fly, but you don't know how. But you're worried that it might hatch.
It's basically building a car out of nothing but flux capacitors.
Yeah.
That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
Coding is Numenera.
Yes.
But you do have this magic moment where, like, you just completely, it's like an alien language, and then you just leave it there for a while, but then you come back, like, a week later having learnt some new stuff, and you look at it and you kind of, like, you can sort of start decoding it. You're like, actually, I kind of understand this. And that means you can actually, like, change it at all. You can actually do something to make it do something different. Because at first you're like, well, this is good, but it literally just does that. Like, and it is very much like, it feels like you're researching technology. It's kind of an interesting thing. Like, that's the only thing I can compare it to is in, like, XCOM or something of like, you've got this thing, it's amazing, but we don't understand it at all.
Except instead of, like alien engine VTOL technology, it's like Matt can make his crab's heads attached to the legs.
Precisely, right? Precisely. But no, I'm learning a lot more. I've actually got off piece now. The tutorials got me going, but now I'm all out in the
into the wild,
yeah.
Code.
Are there any videos that you found helpful? Because I know that Tom Francis has his Game Maker.
Tom Francis's stuff
series.
Is the Game Maker series I used to begin with. I found it increasingly at first. I did it like almost step by step, like GCC bite size of being like, now do this, because I was really basic. But then I kept having ideas and I kept going off on tangents. And now I got to about like episode 10, I think. But now I go back occasionally and he does have some really useful tips. But I know a lot of the stuff he's talking about.
Basically,
now.
You've surpassed him.
Yeah, basically.
You're just, he's a programmer, but you're like a programmer.
Yeah, the games you make just seem really quite basic now by comparison, obviously.
Although supposedly you made Gunpoint from like, the fundamental power remapping in Gunpoint came from some quirk of dev where he was like, oh, hey, this is actually fun. It wasn't meant to be in the game.
No, and you get a lot of that. Like, a lot of time you kind of have weird things happen. You kind of go, should I keep this? Or like sometimes you have a really big problem and you just think, is it going to be easier just to make this a part of the thing?
Independent game development there for you.
Honestly, like, one of the things I have noticed is I've been thinking about, like...
crabs.
Lots of things over the years where there've been, like, slight things, like, little quirks in how the game works in terms of shooting, right? In terms of, like, I've had games where I'm like, oh, if you run and shoot, it does this weird thing. It does something slightly different if you're, like, moving when you shoot. And I'd used that in games. I'd had a thing where I'm like, oh, cool. And I'd used it to my advantage. And I'd always assume that it'd be, like, some little quirky thing that the game devs had put in as, like, a kind of bonus little thing to find out. Whereas now I realise that probably it's just a weird side effect of some code.
You have reminded me of a weird bit of trivia I got from a friend of mine who used to play Halo competitively, and that if you crouch and face the floor, you basically tuck your head between your legs, which makes you unheadshotable. So if you do that and run backwards, you're safe.
Yeah, you just find these really weird little things that aren't supposed to be there.
Presenting your arse at
yes,
people.
Running backwards like a little army of arses running towards you.
That's the way to do it. That's the way to do it. But no, I am actually learning now. I feel like if you do stick with it, it's like any kind of learning. If you want to learn something, you have to do it 3 times. And then once you've done it 3 times, you kind of know it. But
that's how it worked with me with murder.
Yeah.
First 2, really awkward. Third...
couldn't remember. You had the knife the wrong way around. Oh, this is a nightmare. But yeah, I might actually make a video about it at some point. Some sort of like kind of condensed thing of what I've learned in my first few months.
So Tom Francis videos are how to learn to make a game.
Yeah, Tom Francis games are actually like they teach you how to code.
Then you could do a video of how to learn how to make a game.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I wouldn't do tutorials because they're already kind of well covered. But I might do something funny about my first experiences or something with it. But
sure.
It is kind of it's a weird world, but I'm getting all right at it. It's just, I think you kind of hit points where you have to have a certain kind of persistence. There was a day I spent my last Sunday, actually, my fun thing to do on the Sunday when I had some time off was just to sit for 8 hours coding. And I spent 6 hours going up against the exact same error. Every time I pressed play, it had the exact same error. And I spent 6 hours just changing code, trying to make that error not appear, because I didn't actually understand what the error meant. And I Googled it, and I didn't really understand it, because I didn't really understand what I was doing. I was playing with this alien contraptions that I didn't really get.
No, that definitely sounds like my hell.
But by the end of the 8 hours, I get it now. I can do it. But yeah, it's sort of hell, but it's
I don't know.
It's fun.
I've always had like little ideas for things that I want to do, but they never feel big enough for the absolute sheer amount of time it would take to learn how to get anything approaching that.
You'd be amazed. Like a lot of the really basic stuff is so easy. Like
yeah, I've got tiny ideas that rely on stupidly complicated things. It seems.
The weird thing is though, the things you think are really really simple to code end up being hell, and the things that you imagine will be really complicated are really easy.
There's one that involves understanding whether somebody was being positive or negative in an internet comment.
That's pretty one of the easy
quite
ones.
easy, yeah.
I don't know, because but as soon as you get into actually understanding the how people use language, it's just a nightmare. You'd need a proper corpus of that language. You'd need to understand colloquial usage and internet usage.
You fudge it somehow, yeah.
I guess you'd sort of try and get it to learn by giving it a few examples.
Doesn't sound like you want to make a game. It sounds like you want to make
positive and
AI.
See, this is the thing. It's none of them are game things. They're just little experiments or thought experiments, or I really want to do more with visualization of things because I want to be able to sort of show data more easily. But the ideas that I've had tend to go in weird directions and involve unpicking the
weird directions are always
language.
But I think that I think they're using Game Maker to decode language.
But then it's so this thing that people would use for 3 seconds and then go, is it really worth the hundreds of hours?
It's more tools you could sell to psychologists.
I know a guy who I'm going to put you in touch with, actually. But the time has come to everybody go to the Rapture except Matt to go to the kitchen.
Matt has gone to the kitchen. Goodbye.
Do you want to set your timer for 10 minutes?
No, it's over now. The podcast, as far as I'm concerned, is over.
All right,
People at home, don't turn off your Podcastio device.
Unless you, like me, have not played the game yet and want to play.
Wait, no, because we can start off by doing spoiler-free, and we will warn you when we get into spoilers.
Okay, well, I don't want to hear anything, so I'm going to see you.
Later!
Bye!
So,
thank you for listening to our podcast.
How would you describe Everybody's Gone to the Rapture? Because it is a walking simulator, first and foremost. Walking around nice English countryside. So we're going to do the spoiler-free.
Yeah.
And then we'll suddenly reverse it.
I would describe it as an exploration game crossed with a radio play.
Yeah, that's really good. You wake up outside an observatory in a tiny very English countryside, unbelievably well researched by an English dev based out of Brighton. And everybody is missing, and you are able to listen to conversations that happened before they all went missing, similar to the traditional Bioshock audio log, except accompanied by paper dolls who roughly act where the actors are, and you unpick things. And we're gonna do our best to avoid spoilers for probably maybe 1 more minute, and then we'll give you your warning to GTFO.
Yeah, well, in that case, with the spoiler-free stuff, did you want to talk about whether you think it creates a good sense of place, or is that going to get into
No, I think we can for sure say that. I think that's one of the game's biggest selling points. I think something I never quite got with Bioshock, while it's interesting to go into people's flats, I actually got a sense of being a voyeur, entering things like pubs and houses and Everyone's Gone to the Rapture, because I knew I didn't belong there. I felt really nosy in a very unhealthy way. I do think I was really affected by the game in a lot of ways, though. I specifically was listening to the soundtrack again today, away from the game, and found myself actually with tears in my eyes, because I guess remembering what an emotional journey I'd had. I will say that I think the best thing about that game is the sound design and the soundtrack composition, and if you're at all into that stuff, then you should buy it just for that reason.
Jessica Curry's work's really good.
Did you find just emotionally it worked for you? If it's a no...
Not particularly. I found it very hard to attach to the game at all, I think. Some of the stories were quite affecting that cropped up through the course of it. But so with the sense of place, I could see that it was recreating very faithfully things that I remembered.
Yeah,
and
you actually grew up in a more rural area than I did.
I did, and even though I grew up in the southeast of England, whereas this is Shropshire, but it's, there were a lot of sort of similarities in terms of the landscape, and you'd sort of see very peculiarly English sort of signage, or there was a weird moment where I was in one of the public phone boxes, and I realised that this was from the time before they had added the 1 to the area code.
Oh, really?
Yeah, seriously. And so there were lots of little moments like that, and just sort of it's interesting seeing that stuff faithfully recreated.
I feel like there's a but coming. Like,
it was that I could see the amount of work, and I could see that it was these things that I recognised, but I didn't ever feel the emotional pull of that, or I didn't ever feel a personal sense of recognition or attachment to that place that they'd created. And I think that was a bit of a problem for me, because I was walking around this thing going, that's technically excellent, but there was I struggled to find the heart in the place.
Okay.
And I think a lot of that was, well, not a lot of it, but I think part of it was that the houses that you do explore never felt lived in to me.
Mm-hmm.
They felt sort of too tidy. There were no toys lying around if there had been children. There were no, or like there was one as a sort of
a token.
Or,
yeah.
Like
that child's one action figure.
Worn or crinkled or I don't,
yeah, it all felt every house does kind of feel like especially the pubs, feel like the sterile interior of someone who obsessively keeps their house clean. Okay, in which case then let's sound the spoiler klaxon. And
nice.
That was bad. And say that if you don't want the end of everyone's gone to the Rapture spoiled, turn off the podcast now, because we're not going to talk about anything else. You won't miss anything. And thank you very much for listening.
Yeah, also coolghosts.net.
Coolghosts.net.
Hey.
Boom. Do you have anything you want to plug before we lose?
I've already mentioned my Twitter, so I don't think there's
a good
really,
Twitter though.
There's
lots of good
else.
photoshops.
Yeah, well, it's if you want Ed Sheeran's chest tattoo that may or may not exist, it certainly exists on my Twitter. So it's at Philippa War.
For the rest of you then, here we go. So I will quickly say that I didn't buy that for a game that was so emotionally resonant. And I guess we should spoil this if you don't mind it being spoiled. But haven't played the game. What it turns out is essentially an extraterrestrial being of some kind of indescribable and not at all familiar construction has appeared and is basically eating people.
It's basically, it's been picked up by the observatory and, it's infecting people and causing them to develop brain tumours and hemorrhage and
but then they just suddenly vanish.
Sort of, they are.
Starting with the kids, I think? Or was it starting with the old people, yeah.
And so, and there's a sort of central couple, I think, who one of them is the lady Kate. She is the one who's up at the observatory doing a lot of work, and Stephen is more attached to the village because it's where he grew up. She's kind of the outsider from the States, and he's
Kate very much
come back home. I guess.
Did your read on the ending mean that you were playing Kate?
I thought that I was because of how the game introduces you, but then I sort of, because at the end you see what happens to her from a third person perspective, I kind of didn't think that you were at that point.
I thought you were, because that's the only time the camera pulls back.
Oh, okay. That's an interesting point.
But I mean...
I think I was in a weird situation because I told you this earlier off podcast, but basically I got so frustrated with the moving around and how slow it was even when you implement the running that I wasn't physically playing it myself. I was sitting next to my partner who was playing it and I was enjoying the story.
Yeah.
And that's the way that I could engage with it. If I'd been left on my own to play it, I think I probably wouldn't have got all the way through.
That's
to
crazy,
the end.
because for me that's slow pace. Like I guess this comes back to the sound working for me, the visuals worked for me, the sound, it all seemed stunning to me, so I had absolutely no problem walking, and I couldn't believe they introduced running. The idea of I guess it's
running.
Well, is it just marginally?
Really.
A speedy waddle. Yeah, I mean,
you gradually speed up, and it's really not. I couldn't really even notice it at points.
Oh God. Well, I mean, it's. I totally get why they were hesitant to put in just full pelting around, because what that game has going for it is the atmosphere. And if you're saying, at some point, what's the point? It's an interesting question for a developer, though. It's like, if a player's not into this very slow, mournful journey, do you want to give them the option to run through it? Because, that's not going to improve the game at all. If they're not enjoying it, they'll just be moving through it, but faster.
I think it's more that because, for me, I wasn't as taken with the atmosphere, and I wasn't finding I was engaged as much when I was walking around the houses. There wasn't... there was a Simon Says toy, I think, that, just on top of a suitcase in a room, and you couldn't do anything with that. And at that point,
you don't. Time has stopped, and I'm not sure you exist.
Well, yeah, there is that. But I think, but on a mechanical level, at that point, you have no way of interacting. And because I still hadn't fully gelled with the game at that point, and the stories hadn't quite hooked me yet, I was kind of really struggling at that point, and was just like, I don't get a sense of what it is that's supposed to keep me going from the bits in between the stories, because it clearly wants me to find all of these things and to experience. I assumed it wanted me to experience as much of the story as I could.
Well, you don't
bits
have
in
to.
between
The attitude I brought to it was kind of, I drifted through an area and I just walked on when I wanted something new. I didn't feel the need to hit all the conversations.
See, I did. I felt like I was planning my route around the village just to sort of make sure that I'd been to all of the houses and, experienced as much of it as I could. Because it felt like the more you found out, the more rewarding the story would be.
But did you find that to be true?
I think so. I mean,
See, what you're making it sound like to me.
As in, because I know that there were bits of the story, like subsequently through conversations with other people, I know that there were bits that I missed, even though I thought that we'd got all of them. And so, that was an odd experience. And I don't think you have to get everything, but at the same time, I'm kind of wondering how much the developers actually wanted you to experience, because I'm not sure how much of it I would have experienced if I'd been playing it.
I found the ending interesting. The ending was the most, as soon as my girlfriend and I finished it, we just talked about it for 15 minutes. Because we didn't like it. We didn't like the techno babble that Kate speaks. And again, for everyone who hasn't played it, at the end of the game, you finish walking around the village and you basically discover that this scientist, essentially it's a scientist couple, and one of them is running around trying to contain the being and doing everything he can to essentially have the village bombed.
He's also a dickhead.
He's a prat, but then, I don't know if anyone in that story comes across hugely well. But then Kate also instead tries to, communicate or coexist with
the priest.
Being.
Seems like a decent
No, the
guy.
priest is alright, yeah, you're totally right. And he has the best death scene as well, followed by the choir and walking slowly with the light effects.
See, I didn't see some of the death scenes. That's what I'm talking about with missing content.
I didn't see all of them either, but again, I felt like the story was so abstracted, it's like...
I don't think you need to, and I don't want to come across as sort of saying that was the point of it, or the point of the work that they were doing. I would have been happy to experience just bits of it. It's more that I didn't get on with the presentation, and that kept getting in the way of just sort of chilling out and letting the other stuff flow over me.
So it had fundamental difficulties that meant you couldn't...
Essentially, because I was talking to my partner about this afterwards, and he likened it to, really enjoying the idea of a thing, but sort of, in a book, but then really stumbling when it came to the writer's particular style.
Yeah, sure, that makes sense. The presentation of the thing.
Yeah.
It was, yeah. So I should finish what I was saying earlier before about the ending. You get to the end and essentially end up walking through a series of courtyards which are run by Kate, who's had endless time to coexist with this being because time has kind of stopped. And then a load of beautiful arrays, almost like a Beautiful Mind style, so far exaggerated science that it no longer makes any sense anymore, which is kind of fitting for...
equations chalked all over the road.
Yeah, and then 20 typewriters all typing the same gobbledygook code and all that stuff. And then finally she seems to decide that she's done existing in no time for... however many eternities or minutes she's been there, and then it sort of commits herself to the void with everything else, the implication being that the earth is also going to be absorbed by this thing, which I thought was, again, wonderfully presented in visuals and sound, and yet the writing was just so unnecessary.
She was saying about, I think at some point she says about sort of finding your perfect partner, or, finding the thing that completes you, and for her it was this sort of thing that's manifesting itself in the code or in the radio waves and stuff like that, and it's sort of like she becomes one with this monster, or it's sort of, it's kind of like an apotheosis kind of thing, as a kind of an ending scene, and it's one of those things where it Yeah, it really did feel like one of those 70s sci-fi kind of radio shows, or like one of those peculiarly British
end of the world.
Yeah, and so I was kind of fine with that. I
liked a lot of it, and I liked the way it ended with just sort of desperation, which I like. If they want an English game, it's not just going to be modelled in post boxes and really ugly couches. It's going to be modelled in a sort of sad accepting of the apocalypse.
Like, I found her bit more palatable, not more palatable, but his bit was moving. Stephen's bit that happens just before, but it had that ham-fisted analogy beforehand where where he's sort of saying about his dad, and like there's a story about a tragic story about a fox.
Oh yeah.
And it's all highly symbolic, and at that point it felt a bit like it was just so heavy-handed, and I kind of was just like, if this is the ending, like really.
But it wasn't.
I mean, it wasn't, but it's kind of, I think that was part of the problem for me, but the writing could be quite uneven or quite.
Yeah, I agree. I think the last thing I'll say about it is that, you play something like Journey and you come away from it and you go, oh, that was beautiful, didn't they do a great job? I think it's incredible and awesome to have something like Everyone's Gone to the Rapture. Well, this is more so for me because you actually had trouble with the implementation. But for me, the opportunity to play a game and go, like, what did that ending mean? Did we like it? What did we think of these characters? What did we find plausible? Like, that represents games reaching for something so much higher than, like, I mean, I love Journey. It's unbelievable. It's probably it's almost certainly a better game than this. But I love that Everyone's Gone to the Rapture is reaching for something even loftier and more difficult to attain. This kind of like abstracted storytelling, like characters that you don't like, and an ending that is fundamentally left up to you. I found that really interesting, and I think it's worth playing for that reason.
I also really loved seeing Britishness represented. I mean, it might have been a version that I couldn't quite gel with for some reason, but it was it was refreshing to not see a US style house, or it genuinely was like there are these weird like little stone kind of concretey things that you get that mark some official thing in roads in the UK, and they've got like yellow plastic on the front of them and some like numbers or letters or something.
Yeah.
And I don't know what they are. I've never known what they are, but they've always just been like, I've always been about 20 feet from one my entire life, and so it was really weird to see them in a game, because a game is usually something that has Americana, whereas I was so proud of this. This is Shropicana.
Shropicana.
Yeah, there you go. I was so proud of myself for that. But yeah, so I think that's not to be underestimated, just in a kind of
just like it's
changing up the visual landscape of games and their vocabulary is
completely
just fantastic. And so and with games like this, I didn't particularly get on with it, but I do think that it's worthwhile. I'm really glad that other people have got a lot out of it. I'd quite like to. I would actually genuinely like to talk to the Chinese Room about how much they were hoping that people would see, and like what they were hoping people would experience.
What their kind of ideal path through the game would be?
Basically, or like the paths that... I'd also just like to talk to other people about the paths that they took if they really enjoyed the game, and the ones that they did if they really didn't. Like, is it something where you lose a certain amount if you actually try and go to all the houses, and because then you become frustrated because you start seeing inconsistencies, like some of the doors that are ajar don't open and some of them do, and it's that sort of like you don't quite understand the language of the game sometimes. And
again, this seems like a loftier sort of design template to follow than other walking simulators or again Journey, because those games are either in small self-contained spaces or they have one line through them, but this gives you more of an open world. It's arriving in a field and knowing you can walk in any direction, but then also having all the difficulties to go along with that. I think it's really interesting, but my God, we've been talking for a long time. And
do you know what I'd really love? I would really love all of the audio as sound files that I could just set to shuffle play. on like an iPod or something.
What, you mean like the bird noises?
No, as in the actual story snippets.
Wow.
Because I would just love to just encounter them at odd moments during my own day, you know? Maybe this goes back to what I was saying earlier about what I want in like a second screen thing, is maybe just every now and again it feeds me another bit of a story that's not necessarily in order, but I can just chew over it while I'm doing something else.
I just saw Metal Gear Solid 5, when you get audio logs and records from the game and stuff, you don't have to listen to them in the game. You can get files and then in the official app, and then listen to it when you walk to the shops or something.
Yeah.
Or just whenever you feel like chewing over a bit of story that doesn't make sense. Less relaxing, more stuff about war than about birds or neighbours and gossip. But still, we're getting there slowly.
Yeah.
Right, that seems like a good place to call it as any. Thanks so much for coming on, Pip.
That's all right. It's been fun.
It has been good, and thank you everybody for listening. We'll be back next week with still more video games chat. You can't stop us. We're unstoppable. Bye, everybody.